Hi, my name's Alan Tsao, and I help students master AP Physics 1. Today, I actually want to talk about how do you handle difficult lectures. Like you don't understand the teacher's explanations, you don't understand what's happening in class, you're having a hard time focusing, and you're having a hard time just figuring out what's going on. This is a very normal thing to happen. Happened to me in college, but for some people it happens in high school, especially because a lot of you are taking pretty advanced classes pretty early in your education. So I want to break down kind of three main strategies that I like to do to handle these kinds of classes. One is take notes, but not too many notes. I see a lot of students when I'm teaching, they want to write down every single thing that I'm doing when I'm working through a problem. And the problem here is that your brain is focused a lot on writing and copying instead of listening to what's being said. That is a problem because the writing itself is kind of jumbled and very hard to follow for most professors, most teachers, unless they're extremely well organized. And so, if you are not listening, if you're not understanding what's being said, it doesn't really matter that you write everything down. Instead, what you want to do is you want to pay attention to the overall thing that the professor or the teacher is trying to convey, and then only write down the things that are relevant. Write down the things that help you remember it. These days you guys have tools. You can take pictures of work on the board and things like that to help you so you don't have to copy everything down, or like notes can be provided electronically. So ask for those things, or ask for the ability to take pictures if you're trying to get everything down. And then that will free up your mind to pay attention to what's being said and what's being explained. The second thing is to not necessarily focus on everything you don't understand. So a common thing that might happen in a lecture is that you may not understand a piece. And you may get fixated like, oh, he said that and he showed that. I'm not sure I understood. Like they're deriving an equation and you're like, oh, I don't know how he got from that step to that step. Okay. A common mistake is to try to figure out in that moment, to try to understand that thing right there. The problem is the teacher will usually move on to something else beyond that point. And if you're kind of nervous to interrupt and ask about a clarification on there, which I was that student who didn't really like to ask to interrupt. What I would do is I would note there, like, I don't get this step. Like, I would write that down, but I would continue listening and saying, like, look, I don't understand what he said there, but I'm going to continue listening. Because if you try to fix it, you try to figure out the part that they said before, and then you're not listening to anything that's being said after that, it's going to be harder because then you're going to be totally lost. You have to stay in the moment and keep up with the professor or the teacher. But that means that there's going to be some things you don't know. And so you're going to make a note like, hey, why is that? Make a quick note to yourself. Just try to remind yourself, what is it you were confused about? And a couple of things might happen. As you proceed in the lesson, that answer might reveal itself. You might be like, okay, now I get what he was doing by there, or now I get what he was saying about there. Or it might not. And if it doesn't, then you'll have a question there that you are going to ask about later. But the key thing is you do not want to lose the thread. You do not want to lose the conversation of what's happening in the lesson. Because especially when you get to college, okay, professors are not going to slow down for you. If you'd be like, oh, can I take a minute to write that down? Or like, you can ask questions, but the professor is generally going to just power through and continue going through things. And you have to keep up. The third thing is you're going to then collect all of those questions that you had, and you are going to either ask it to your teacher later by either going to office hours, going after school, sending them an email, or you're going to bring it to someone else you know that you're just going to get that question answered. And you're not going to wait more than a day or two on this. Like, that question is fresh in your mind. You want to be asking that question almost immediately to somebody to get that cleared up. Okay, you do not want to wait very long. If you put it off a week, you will have forgotten what the question was or the context of what was going on. And so you want to get that answered as quickly as possible. And that way you don't fall behind, because the more questions you have unanswered, the more you will fall behind, because the next time you have a class, you're going to have more questions. And the next time after that, you're going to have more questions. And those uncertainties are going to build on top of one another until you feel like you're falling way too far behind. Okay? So I hope that helped. Let me know, what things do you struggle with in difficult classes? Or what strategies do you guys employ that you find is helpful for yourself?